Previously in the town of Black Hollow, Dr. Evelyn Hawley came here chasing science following the trail of the crimson wing owl into the fog-bound mountains. But what she found was a town suffocating with secrets, and a man who refused to let her go. Her notes, her freedom, even her future slipped from her hands the moment he decided she would be his. Now, in part 2, Evelyn awakens not as a guest, but a prisoner. And as Black Hollow's shadows close in, she learned that the man who holds her captive may not be entirely human, and that the greatest danger in this town is the one who refuses to let her leave.
Evelyn woke with a start, heart hammering, in a bed that wasn't hers. The ceiling above her was painted once, long ago, but the paint was cracked and blistered, flaking like dried skin. The walls were paneled in dark wood, heavy velvet curtains drawn tight, muffling any hint of daylight. A single lamp burned on the nightstand, casting the room in a low amber glow that seemed to belong to another century. She sat up quickly, pushing tangled hair out of her face. Her satchel sat on a desk across the room. Her notebooks had been laid out neatly in a fan, her sketches and papers stacked with precision. Someone had gone through them. She swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her boots were gone, replaced with soft slippers. The realization made her stomach lurch. Someone had undressed her shoes, tended to her. The intimacy of it made her skin crawl. The door opened. Adrian entered without hurry, without noise, as if he'd been waiting for her to stir. His coat was gone, replaced by a black vest and white shirt with the collar open. He looked almost human like this, almost casual, but not really. His movements were too smooth, his presence too large for the space. "You're awake," he said softly, as though it were a secret between them. "You fainted." Her hands curled into fists. "Where am I?" "In my home," Adrian replied. He gestured around the room with one elegant sweep. "You collapsed in the woods. I couldn't leave you lying in the dirt." Her jaw tightened. "You had no right." He tilted his head, eyes flashing green in the lamplight. "Would you rather I left you there?" Before she could answer, a servant appeared behind him, pale and silent, carrying a tray. The smell of stew and warm bread filled the room. The servant placed it on the desk, bowed their head, and left without meeting Evelyn's eyes. Adrian pulled out the chair for her, motioning. Courtly, polite, as if this were dinner at a fine hotel. Evelyn didn't move. His gaze lingered on her until she relented, walking stiffly across the room. She sat. He guided the chair in with a quiet scrape of wood. He poured her water as though she were royalty, placed the glass before her with both hands. The civility made her feel trapped, more than chains ever could. When she reached for the spoon, his hand caught her wrist. His fingers were cool, steady, his nails sharp. He turned her hand over, studying her palm as though it were an ancient map. His eyes narrowed, thoughtful. Then, without warning, he dragged his nail across her skin. A thin line of red welled up instantly. Evelyn gasped and tried to jerk away, but his grip was iron. He lifted his finger to his lips and tasted the blood. His eyes flared darker. "Compatible," he murmured. The word sent a jolt of nausea through her. "What the hell are you talking about?" she snapped, ripping her hand back. He only smiled faintly, as though amused by her anger. "Eat," he said, gesturing to the food. Her spoon rattled against the bowl as she lifted it. Her appetite was gone, but she forced the motions, partly out of spite, partly because she knew she needed her strength. Adrian sat across from her, unmoving, his hands folded. He didn't eat. He only watched. The next days bled together. If it could be called freedom, she had it. She wasn't chained. Her room wasn't bolted from the outside. But every hallway led her back to the same doors. Every window opened to drops too steep to climb. And wherever she turned, Adrian was there. When she awoke in the mornings, he was already seated at the desk, pretending to read a book. When she tried to walk the gardens, he appeared suddenly at her side, offering his arm. When she scribbled furiously in her notebook, he leaned over her shoulder, his breath cool against her ear. Predator patience. Predator play. He tried to weave a net of civility around her. One afternoon, he set a small vase of winter roses on her desk, their fragrance heady and almost cloying. "They grew wild on the edge of the hollow," he said. "I thought they belonged beside you." Evelyn only turned back to her writing. She refused to give him the softening he expected. Another evening, he brought a violin to her chamber, drawing a slow, aching melody that filled the room with longing. He played with eyes half closed, clearly accustomed to women melting under the sound. But Evelyn kept her arms crossed, staring at the fire until the last note faded. His lips curved, but the smile never reached his eyes. At dinner, he tested her further. He brushed his fingers against hers when passing the bread, watching closely for the blush, the stammer. When none came, his hand lingered a moment too long, as if daring her to recoil. She did, sharply. His jaw clenched. Other women, Evelyn realized, must have yielded easily to this. His beauty, his charm, his practiced air of danger. But she would not. One night, he tried words instead of gestures. He sat opposite her, voice low, recounting centuries of passion and devotion. "I have loved queens, scholars, poets," he murmured, eyes burning into hers. "They all bent to me in the end. But you—" He broke off, studying her as though she were a puzzle piece he couldn't quite force to fit. "You resist me." Evelyn met his gaze evenly, though her heart raced. "Maybe because I'm not for bending." For the first time, frustration flickered plain across his features. His hand gripped the arm of his chair, wood groaning beneath his strength. Yet when he spoke, his voice was velvet again, deliberate. "You will, in time. They always do." But he said it more to himself than to her, as though he needed the reassurance. And still, he tried. He walked with her beneath the lanterns in the courtyard, brushing close enough that his shoulder grazed hers. He recited lines of poetry in a dozen tongues, his voice coaxing, velvet dark. He even allowed silence to stretch between them sometimes, a dangerous intimacy that promised more if she reached for it. She never did. Sometimes he invaded her space more boldly. He stood behind her as she sketched, his hands resting lightly on the back of her chair, so close she could feel the cold of him through the wood. Other times she would wake at night and sense him there, seated in the shadows by the window, watching her sleep with the stillness of a statue. On one evening, he pressed a goblet of wine into her hands, the scent richer than any vintage she had ever known. "It will soften your dreams," he told her, his eyes gleaming with promise. She set it aside untouched. His smile froze, brittle around the edges. Then came the moment his composure frayed. She had been pacing her chamber, restless, muttering notes into her journal, when suddenly he was there, too close, too silent. He caught her wrist, pulling her toward him with a sudden urgency she had not yet seen from him. His other hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face up to his. "You fight me as though you don't already feel it," he whispered, his lips a breath from hers. "This inevitability." Her pulse thundered. For one terrible instant she thought he would kiss her, steal the choice from her altogether. She twisted sharply, breaking free with a ragged gasp. "No," she said, fierce despite the tremor in her voice. "You don't get to take what isn't given." The room went very still. His eyes blazed green fire, his fangs lengthening unbidden. He loomed over her, predator no longer pretending to be courtier. For a heartbeat, Evelyn thought he would strike, truly strike. But then, with visible effort, he mastered himself. He stepped back, smoothing his vest, restoring his mask of calm. Only his clenched jaw betrayed the storm beneath. "You make this harder than it must be," he said quietly. Dangerous quiet. No one has resisted me this long." His gaze lingered on her throat, his voice dipping into a growl. "Do not test how thin my restraint runs." Every refusal, every cool look, every spine-stiffened silence carved a deeper crease of hunger into him. The veneer of patience thinned. At times she saw it, the bare flash of his fangs when she caught him staring at her throat too long, the way his hand flexed as if aching to seize her. And yet, he never forced. Not fully. Not yet. He seemed to want her submission freely given, to savor the moment she broke. But Evelyn did not break. It thrilled her and terrified her in equal measure. And it stoked his fury, for Adrian Blackwood was not a man, nor a monster, accustomed to waiting. That was when the dreams began. At first they were soft, almost tender. Evelyn would wake with the memory of warmth at her back, of fingers tracing her wrist in the dark, of lips brushing her hair. Dreams that left her shaken, confused, heart pounding as though something had truly happened. Then they deepened. She dreamed of lanterns glowing in the forest, of herself walking hand in hand with Adrian through endless fog. His voice followed her there, low and persuasive. "Stop running. You belong here. You belong to me." She tried to turn away, but the fog always thickened, hiding every path except the one that led to him. One night she dreamed she stood in Black Hollow's square, surrounded by townsfolk with those shimmering eyes. They bowed to her as though she were queen, their voices whispering her name like a hymn. And at her side, Adrian, his hand covering hers. She woke with tears on her face, a mingled grief and longing she could not explain. By the third night, she understood. These weren't dreams of her own making. They were his. He was in her mind. She confronted him at breakfast, shoving the untouched tray away. "Stay out of my head." He only smiled, unrepentant. "Dreams are doors you already left unlocked. I only stepped inside." Her skin crawled. "You twist them." "I show you truth," he countered smoothly. "You crave belonging, Evelyn. You crave not being alone. I only give you a glimpse of what could be." His eyes gleamed as he leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. "With me, you would never be alone again." Her hands trembled beneath the table, but she forced steel into her voice. "Better alone than yours." For once his smile faltered. A shadow of irritation flickered, then hardened into something colder. But that night, when sleep finally claimed her, she dreamed again. This time not of roses or devotion, but of fangs pressing to her throat, of surrender blurred with fire and pleasure. She woke with her own hand clenched at her neck, his voice echoing in her skull. "You will yield. It is only a matter of when." And though she resisted, though she forced herself to push every thought of him away, she could not stop the shiver that ran through her when she remembered the dream. That shiver hardened into resolve. She could not wait here to be broken, dream by dream, day by day. She had to escape. On the fourth night, she stole a key from one of the servants. It trembled in her hand as she crept through the corridors, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it would betray her. She found the outer doors, slid the key into the lock, and bolted into the night. The air outside was cold and sharp. The forest stretched endless and black, but she ran. Branches clawed her face, roots caught her boots. She stumbled, rose again, ran until her lungs burned. And then she saw it. Headlights on the ridge road. Civilization. Safety. A car moving slowly down the gravel. She stumbled toward it, waving her arms. "Help!" she screamed, her voice ragged. The car didn't stop. It passed, driver's eyes fixed ahead, unseeing, as if she weren't there. And then he was. Adrian stepped from the shadows, his coat unruffled, his hair smooth, his breathing calm. He was simply there, as if the dark had birthed him. "Evelyn," he said, almost sorrowful. "Why do you run?" Terror spiked, and she bolted again. He caught her in seconds. His hand closed around her arm, unyielding. He spun her, pinning her to a tree. "Let me go!" she screamed, thrashing. His grip tightened, not bruising, not savage, but final. "I can't," he said. His voice dropped to a growl. "You are mine." His hand rose to her throat, holding her there, firm enough to remind her she was prey. His eyes burned green fire, unblinking. "You belong to Black Hollow," he whispered. "You belong to me." And then he bit. Pain split her neck like fire. She cried out, shoving, clawing at his shoulders, but his grip was immovable. Blood rushed from her, dizzying, weakening. Her mind screamed no, 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 but her body betrayed her. Nerves blurring pain into a disorienting shudder of unwanted heat. When he pulled back, her vision swam. Her body sagged, trembling. Adrian held her upright as though she were precious glass. He bit his own wrist, dark blood welling, and pressed it to her lips. She turned her head away, but his hand gripped her jaw, forcing her mouth open. "Drink," he commanded, voice low, unyielding, "or die." Her body convulsed. Instinct took over. She swallowed. The world ignited. Her veins seared, her heart convulsed, her lungs gasped as though drowning. Heat and cold tangled, pain and ecstasy blurring until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. When it was done, she slumped against him, weak and shaking. He held her close, his lips brushing her hair. "Now you live," he whispered. "Now you endure. Now you are mine." Evelyn's body was limp in his arms, her head resting against his shoulder as if she were a bride too faint to walk. The burn of his bite still pulsed in her veins, making her eyelids heavy, her limbs weak. She wanted to fight, to scream, but she could do neither. Adrian carried her effortlessly into the square. The night seemed to hold its breath. One by one, the townsfolk emerged, their eyes glinting with that unnatural shimmer. They gathered around, silent but watchful, until the air was thick with their presence. He lifted her slightly, displaying her as one might present a sacred relic. "This is Evelyn," he declared. His tone was measured, courtly. "She belongs to us now. She is family." The crowd stirred, heads bowed, murmurs rippled through them, voices blending into something low and reverent. Evelyn felt their gaze settle on her, not with hostility, but with unsettling acceptance. Adrian glanced down at her, his lips curving faintly. To them, it was a smile of devotion. Inside, his thoughts coiled with satisfaction. Mine. After all these years, mine. I've searched through centuries of faces, through bloodlines that failed, through women too fragile to withstand the hunger. And now, finally, fate delivers me someone strong, someone who can endure, someone who will last. He bent his head, letting his words brush her ear. "Do you feel it, Evelyn? You're no longer alone in this world. Here you have brothers, sisters, and with me, a future." Her pulse stuttered, and Adrian caught it instantly, savoring the rhythm like a melody. She resists now. They always resist at first. But resistance fades. It always does. In time she'll understand. In time she'll turn that fire on me, not away from me. The crowd shifted closer, their pale faces glowing faintly in the lantern light. They looked upon Evelyn as though she had always been theirs. Safe, claimed, untouchable now that Adrian had chosen her. Adrian kissed her temple, a feather-light gesture, deceptively tender. To them, it was a lord's devotion. They didn't see the hunger beneath, the need, the future he already envisioned. Her hand in his, her laughter echoing in these mountains, the children she would give him. dark-eyed and eternal. He straightened, letting his gaze sweep over his people. "This night marks the beginning," he told them, voice ringing through the square. "Our line will thrive again." But his eyes never left her face, pale and defiant even in weakness. "Yes, we will thrive. She doesn't know it yet, but she is already mine, my mate, my future, my eternity." And as the townsfolk bowed in unison, Adrian carried her deeper into the shadows, his thoughts burning with a predator's certainty. "She will never escape me. Not now, not ever."
But outside Black Hollow, Nate, a co-worker and hopeful suitor, has begun searching for Evelyn, her sudden disappearance not going unnoticed. Unaware of the peril that waits within, she knows her fate with Adrian is already sealed, and now her only hope is to protect Nate from being dragged into the same darkness. All the while, Selene lurks Adrian's delusional rival, eager to see Evelyn removed so she can claim him for herself. In Part 3, Evelyn will be forced to balance survival, secrecy, and sacrifice as the circle around her tightens. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Ghost Cherry. Your support keeps these stories alive and ensures you won't miss what happens next.